didn't mean it like that. Wiess tried to catch up with the blonde, who was pushing ahead with reckless abandon. Did you see him? He looks like he's sick. Don't. Yang choked, and it was clear the croaky sound of her voice that made Wiess wince, like she was fighting back tears that refused to shed. Just don't make excuses, Wiess. At any other time, Wiess would have stopped, would have listened. She liked to think she'd grown, though, in her short time with her team. At the very least, she'd grown enough that she refused to leave Yang to be upset. I think he does care. I don't think he fully means what he says, or at least not as he says it. It sounded weak even to her, but it wasn't something she could easily explain. He has to have his reasons. And what? What would those be? Wiess winced. I don't know. But that doesn't mean they're not important, or at least important to him. And here she was, throwing his words back in Yang's face, even though she had barely understood them herself. If Yang knew where the wisdom had come from, she'd never taken it. All the better that Wiess wasn't going to mention it. We have no idea what history he has with the White Fang. It might not be that he hates Blake. Maybe he's just afraid of what will happen if he sees her again. You have every right to be afraid of what might happen, Yang said, still not turning around to face her. Wiess made no effort to look at her face, worried that she might see tears and feel even worse. Yet here you are, willing to at least try, even if you're not sure what will happen. That's me, though. Wiess whispered. This is Jaune. We're not the same person. We're going to act in different ways. What do you think then? Yang asked, turning at last to face her. The blonde girl's cheeks were clear, but her eyes were rimmed red. She looked so proud that Wiess tried to pretend she didn't see it. It was hard though, since the mere sight made her eyes want to water as well. What do you think he feels about us all? That threw her for a moment. In some ways, Wiess wasn't sure what kind of person her partner was. After what he'd said, she would trust he had his reasons for his actions. But that didn't mean it made any more sense. Was his reasons good or bad? And who for? In some strange way, some indescribable manner, he almost reminded Wiess of her father. Not in the way he looked or acted, at least most of the time, but in the way he held himself back. She knew her father cared about her. He always had. But that same caring had taken turns that she didn't agree with. He hadn't wanted her to attend Beacon. Instead, he had wanted her to work within the company, to do something she hated, and he wouldn't have been afraid to try and force the issue. But that wasn't because he didn't care about her. In truth, it was because he perhaps cared too much, enough that he would be willing to limit and try to control her life, just to keep her safe. She didn't think that was Jaune's reasoning here, or that he somehow refused to go with them because he wanted to discourage them from wandering Vale after dark. But that didn't mean he was just being lazy either. I knew about her being in the White Fang, but it wasn't my secret to tell. But if he hated the White Fang, and if he was angry at Blake, then why worry over spilling such a secret at all? Why respect her enough to keep it? I don't know, Yang, Wiess admitted at last. But one thing I do know is that Jaune is definitely lazy. What's your point? Yang sighed, shoulders slumped. Well, if he was truly lazy, if he really was completely apathetic and didn't care either way, then wouldn't he have agreed to come with us? Yang spared an odd look towards Wiess, but she hurried to explain. What I mean is, surely the easier option is to just come with us, or to agree but not put any effort in. And if he really didn't care either way about us or Blake, then he would just pick the path of least resistance. A person like that wouldn't start an argument, because that's too much effort. That seemed to make Yang pause. It didn't last for long, however, as a great sigh tore itself from the taller girl's lungs. Her entire frame seemed to shrink an inch or two. "I'm just tired," she said slowly, and the exhaustion in it made Wiess's forehead crease with worry. One moment he cares, the next he doesn't. And even then it's never clear what he thinks or wants. It's my fault he's here and I've been trying so hard, Wiess. I've been trying so hard to make it work. And Wiess still didn't know what she meant by that. Yang's fault he was here? Where? At Beacon? Or this team in particular? And why would that matter either way? He was a student like them. He signed up, passed the test and got in, just like the rest of them. She didn't ask though. Not when Yang looked stressed enough already. "I've been back and forth so much," the blonde went on. "One moment I'm scared, the next I'm thrilled because it looks like he really cares. Then I'm back to being in the dumps again, then excited once more. I can't keep doing this, Wiess." "I know, Yang," Wiess said, wanting to help but not knowing how. "We can fix this though. Give me a chance to talk to him. After we find Blake. I can make it work. I swear." "I don't know, Wiess." Yang tried to smile, but it came out a grimace. "I'm not a yo-yo, and being yoinked back and forth is making me feel sick to my stomach. It hurts too, since I'm never sure if he hates me or he likes me. Hell, just the other day Ruby was telling me how she thinks he's in love with me. Do you know how confusing all that is?" "I do," Wiess said, thinking instantly of not just her father, but also her sister. Two people who also didn't make it clear how they felt. It was easier for Wiess, though, if only because of how busy they were, but the fact that she didn't have to share a room with the two. "I don't want to be the one who gives up. But this? Do you know Ruby's only my half-sister?" "I didn't," Wiess said. She had half expected it, since they looked so different. But the two were close enough that it never bothered Wiess. But if Yang wanted to talk, then Wiess would listen. The girl looked like she needed it. "My dad used to be married to my mum, and he had me." The despondent tone of Yang's voice told the heiress the tale wasn't going to be a happy one, and Yang didn't waste any time buttering her up. "She left soon after I was born." "Why did she leave?" "No idea. I didn't even get to meet her and she never gave me a reason. Just lived with Dad, gave birth to me, and she decided she didn't like it anymore. I never even got to see her. Never received so much as a letter." "I'm sorry, Yang." "Thing is, I got over that. Or I thought I did. But I've always wanted to know why and kept trying to find out. To hunt her down and demand an answer. I guess it's like you and Blake. I'm pretty sure the answer's going to piss me off. But I can't go on forever not knowing." "And Jaune reminds you of her?" "Weird, I know. I didn't even know her, so how could he be like her? But after Summer, our other mother, went and got killed, I guess I started feeling like I had to know where I stand with people." "Abandonment issues." Wiess didn't say. It was fairly clear. However, and from the uncomfortable look on her face, Yang knew it too. For a girl who kept losing people, why I suppose it made sense that she would stick to anything that's stable. Is that why she was so desperately close to Ruby? And of course Jaune would be the absolute worst person to be near Yang, since we can't tell how he feels. "I think I understand, Yang," Wiess said, reaching out to touch Yang's arm. "What do you want to do?" "I want to find Blake. I want to just get everyone together and see what happens. See if we can't force a final answer out of him. Out of them both. And if either of them refuse, then Yang's face was agonized. Then I'll quit. I can't keep doing this, Wiess. I can't. Would their team even survive? Wiess wasn't sure. But she wasn't willing to give up just yet. Jaune hadn't even gotten 2 hours to himself. He'd left the room almost as soon as they had, eager to escape the oppressing atmosphere and any reminder of the lifelong friends who weren't his friends. He hadn't been in the mood for anything. Not guitar, not training, not even sex. Instead, he wandered aimlessly around the academy, steadfastly ignoring anyone who tried to engage him in conversation. No one had tried, perhaps because of how he staggered by, as though drunk. Occasionally he stopped to hold his head, the dangerous hum within rising to a crescendo as it threatened to overwhelm him. He'd never had a headache so bad before. Not once. But eventually he found a place to crash, and crash he did, slumping into a corner with heavy breath. No one would find him there, or so he'd thought, and when he awoke in the morning, a night's sleep would surely have gotten rid of the pain. That was where Ruby found him, knees drawn up to his chest, head resting atop them in the corner of some dark classroom. He heard her before he saw her. The rapid sound of what could only be described as her boots and semblance combined could be heard from down the corridor, before the door was wrenched open. "I'm not in the mood, Ruby," Jaune growled, loud enough to make her flinch. The pain was throbbing behind his eyes, the pulsing sensation throbbing away. Even her brightly colored clothes seemed to hurt him. His fingers came to his nose, coming away red. For a moment, he thought his harsh words might have been enough, as her face twisted with indecision and she seemed to gnaw on her lower lip. But she took a step forward. "Hey, Jaune. Yang is really upset," the small girl whispered. She was so quiet, yet in the silence of the room her words reached him without difficulty. His jaw ached as he grit his teeth. "Tell me something I don't know, Ruby. You've always been a master of the obvious." "Did she put you up to this? I'd have thought Yang cared enough about you to not throw you into the firing line." "Yang didn't put me up to anything." Ruby said and sat down beside him. Her shoulders were stiff, as though she wasn't sure if he wouldn't knock her aside or something. He tried to tone down on how angry he felt. She didn't deserve his rage. None of them did. Only 2 people had any right to be hated: Cinder and himself. "I overheard her in the corridor," Ruby admitted with a sheepish expression. "I didn't mean to, but... Anyway, that's not important." She said, "How?" Ruby stammered, and there seemed to be a quiver to her voice. She said how she might quit Beacon. "She won't," Jaune said confidently. He knew she wouldn't because that had never happened before. Yang stayed at Beacon until the end. "I wish I could share your confidence," Ruby mumbled, and it wasn't just her unusual choice of words that made him pause, but the way she said them. Was Ruby... well, it made sense that she would be angry at him as well. Yang was really upset, Jaune. This Blake thing has really hurt her, and it's worse because she thinks she is the only one who actually wants Blake back. The accusation was clear, and if it weren't for the pain he felt, he might have mentioned it. Instead, he just sat there with labored breathing, trying to gather himself and think. "Wiess wants her back," Jaune said, and once more Ruby gave him a strange look. "I know how my partner thinks, Ruby. Trust me in that, even if it's the only thing you can trust me in." "I do trust you," she said. Jaune snorted. She had tried to hide it, but he could hear the hesitation there. They'll find Blake and bring her back, and when they do, Wiess and Yang will welcome her with open arms. They're not going to let a pair of cat ears get between them. Ruby gave a small smile and a nod. Even if she wasn't sure what was going on, it was clear she still took him at his word. She would see. Either way, it would work out. It always did. Blake always did this. She always ran, the stupid, stupid girl. And she always got out of it alive. That was a given. But that was because Ruby was always there to rescue her. And on those rare times when Ruby wasn't a member of the team, John made sure to conveniently find a reason to drag her along to the docks, or handle it himself, or someone else would go and stop her, Wiess, Yang, or Pyrrha. But even if they come back together, things won't be the same, will they? Things change. He grunted as he pinched his nose and looked towards the ceiling. She meant how things wouldn't be the same between Yang and him. It was always fairly obvious with Ruby. You won't have to worry about it for too long. She shot him a worried look. Holidays are coming up soon. Things will calm down after that. You'll see. I guess. Ruby smiled, and he felt a stab of guilt for what he truly meant. Things certainly would change. There wouldn't be any more arguments between Team Jazzberry for one, because they would be down their leader. So are you going to hide until it's all over? I'm not hiding. It was a lie, and they both knew it. He wasn't hiding from Yang though, but rather truly hiding from his own emotions. It's just comfortable here. Ruby pushed herself back up, apparently having found out whatever it was she wanted. Jaune wasn't sure if he had passed her test or not. Likely not, considering how he wasn't going to be moved to do anything. I should go then. You don't look very good, and I have to meet up with Pyrrha in the library. Wait. What? Aren't you going into Vale? Jaune asked, staring at her through one eye. The other scrunched shut as he massaged his temples. Why was his brain hurting so much? It was like something was screaming to get out. It was already getting on late. Shouldn't she have already been dragged out by Yang to help look? Ruby tilted her head to the side. The innocent expression was at odds with the agony he felt. No? Why would I? What about the docks? Jaune rushed. The pounding in his head seemed to reach its climax, like statically growing louder. For a second he thought it might knock him out. His vision swam, but he fought past it to ask. What about Penny, Ruby? Who? Ruby asked, before her eyes lit up and she let out a sigh. Jaune, her name's Blake, not Penny. The small girl sighed, apparently not noticing how his mouth fell open. Besides, my team wants to go over our homework together, and Yang's asked us to keep an eye out for Blake if she comes back. Jaune? Where are you, Jaune? He didn't hear anyone anymore. The door slammed shut behind him, but he was already briskly walking down the corridor, heart hammering in his chest. Ruby hadn't met Penny. None of them had. Now that he thought about it, what was more? Ruby wasn't a member of Team Ruby. There was no Team Ruby. That had happened before, of course it had. He tried so many different teams, done so many different things. He knew how they worked. He could go through the motions almost automatically. He had been for the last few decades, doing the same thing over and over, just changing little things to see what it changed. And that was the problem. It was just one of those little things he'd gotten used to doing, almost without thinking about it. Like his training before Beacon, like running away from his family, or throwing himself in front of every little attack that might have threatened his friends. It was instinctual as breathing, which was what had led him to trying not to do it so hard. If Ruby wasn't on the team to save Blake, then he'd always done little things to make sure someone else was. But this time, he'd done something he'd never tried before. He'd done nothing. He hadn't thought to put any plans in place, because he'd always been so focused on forcing himself to not act like he always did. He just assumed it would go how it always did. How it always did when he was actively trying. Men and women shouted in shock and surprise as his power walk broke into a mad dash. Insults were hurled as he knocked students aside. But he didn't stop for any of them. A teacher shouted for him to stop, but he ignored it, barrowing through anyone that dared stand in his path, heart hammering in his chest. The pain in his head was gone, replaced with now perfect clarity and a crushing weight on his chest. He'd fucked up, and Blake was going to pay the price. Blake cried out in agony as her back struck hard granite, bouncing and skittering across it until she came to an agonizing halt. Sun screamed her name, or he might have, she couldn't even tell. Her heart beat in her ears and it felt like she was concussed. One hand pressed down in an effort to push herself up, but a booted foot cruelly kicked it away, sending her falling to the ground so that her cheek slammed into it. Sun went down, and he didn't get back up. Torchwick, that hated man, looked down on him and laughed, as though seeing someone defeated defending another was the most hilarious thing. Blake tried to reach for her weapon, but a faunus in a familiar uniform kicked it away. She looked up towards him, not recognizing the face she could see under the mask. He sneered down at her. The unknown dog faunus, with eyes filled with hate. Why did he hate them so, when they were the same? Were these new recruits? Savage fools who cared for nothing but bloodshed? Or was this how they'd always been, and she just never noticed? He had been right, as much as it agonized her to admit. They had become scum, or they had always been scum. She didn't even know anymore. It all hurt too much, outside and in. Well, 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 kitty cat. Torchwick laughed, strolling towards her. The White Fang laughed at the racist remark, even though it should have made them furious. By this point, she couldn't say she recognized them all, working with not only a human, but one as racist as this. Didn't anyone ever tell you it's dangerous to be outside after bedtime? She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of hearing her, no matter what she said, no matter what foul curse she uttered. He would probably enjoy it. Sorry, Yang, she whispered to herself. I guess I won't be proving him wrong anytime soon. I guess I won't be coming back at all. And Sun was going to die for her mistake as well. Would that she could die twice in his place? It seemed too steep a price to pay for just wanting to help her. Blake tried to gather herself, to cast one last clone in a desperate attempt to retrieve Sun and escape. Her aura was already so weak. Poorly rested and recovered after having so little food and sleep. It hadn't been full when she engaged Torchwick, and after a firm beating, it was just about empty. No words? Shame, kid. But you know, I can get behind a girl who knows when to shut a trap. He lifted his cane to point towards her, the hollow end, a demeaning reminder. Nighty-night, kiddo. Blake clenched her eyes shut. There was a click, followed by a loud explosion, and then a rush of heat.